So I made a video similar to this one quite a while back when these games were younger and or not even released into early access in Predecessor's case. The video also includes Fault 2, which dates the video quite a lot. That game isn't even active anymore, and since the two remaining titles, Paragon the Overprime and Predecessor, are now both publicly available for good rather than just stress tests, I thought it would be a good time to look at both and compare what they offer. Since despite using a lot of the same assets and models, the games play very differently. The aim of this video is to be pretty objective and not necessarily say which game I prefer, but just to give you the info on the differences between them. So let's jump in. I'll start with price and access, since that's one of the first things you will experience before you even get to play the game. Both games plan to be free to play on full launch, much like many MOBAs, with the difference being Overprime is already free, while Predecessor is currently in paid early access with plans to go free later on. This makes it a bit easier to get into Overprime at the moment, although Pred is only $10 for the cheapest access package, so ultimately both games are very accessible in this regard. But if being free to play is incredibly important to you, Overprime is currently your only choice there, and you will have to wait for Predecessor's full release to play it for free. Next up, console access. Since this was a major source of comments on my Predecessor review and my Overprime gameplay I posted, there is a lot of demand for people wanting the MOBA on console. At the time of writing, Predecessor has announced a console version of the game and it will be coming at full release, but during early access the game will only be available on PC and there's no real public progress towards a console release. Pred does, however, already have controller support enabled, so if you're a console main with access to a PC on the side, you can train up on PC using a controller before switching platform on the game's full launch. As for Overprime, there are currently no announced plans to come to console, but that doesn't necessarily mean they never will, and some sources say they've been using dev kits for the PS5. But Predecessor does seem to be ahead of Overprime in terms of console development, so if that's important to you, Pred might be a better choice. They're not ahead on everything though. In fact, Overprime is in general much further ahead in overall development than Predecessor. Overprime has more available heroes, as well as some of their own heroes uniquely designed and not taken from Paragon, as well as custom lore, overall more gameplay features, a solid tutorial, and a more robust rewards and progression system. While Predecessor has some small rewards for like account level during Season 1 of Early Access, Overprime has much more to offer in this regard at the current time. Of course, in the future when Predecessor adds more content this could change, but at the moment, Overprime is significantly ahead in terms of general development. In terms of actual gameplay, of course, with them being based on the same assets and general formula, both games play similar, but they definitely have their differences. Overprime is a much faster paced, more action oriented game, with some elements of arena shooters that would appeal to a more casual and potentially wider audience than just MOBA players. It has the sprint mode to get around faster, teleportation portals between lanes, stealth bushes, and only one tower per lane. Combined, these features give more focus to brawling and teamfighting, which will happen earlier on in Overprime games. Whereas Predecessor is slower, more methodical, and will appeal to more traditional MOBA players that value farming, rotations, and the micro aspects of the game, and will have a longer laning phase with more focus on that, but of course the game will still eventually transition to teamfighting as every MOBA does. This leads to Overprime generally having shorter game times, with Pred being longer. Some people enjoy a shorter match while others prefer longer, so this is really just personal preference. The core gameplay is of course a pretty huge deal, since many of the things in this video, such as being ahead in development or being free, are things that will eventually resolve themselves, but the core gameplay offering of these two is what will draw players to them and keep them there. Overall, Predecessor seems to be more closely emulating what made the original Paragon successful, and it plays very similarly to that, while Overprime is being generally more innovative, trying out new features and deviating from the formula, which might make the game less attractive to Paragon diehards, but more attractive to new people coming into these games, with no preconceived notion of what makes the game good by comparing it to Paragon. And finally, we have funding. Funding is a very important aspect of modern games and worth talking about when comparing these two. Both games are well funded, with Predecessor generally receiving bulk outside funding such as grants from Epic Games to fund development, while Overprime is published and funded by Netmarble, a huge publisher that can provide a more consistent supply of funding as opposed to Predecessor's one-off funding rounds. However, Predecessor's funding rounds are impressive in the money they've raised to say the least, and some extra money will be coming in from early access purchases. I think both games have no lack of funding to make them the best they can be. But that's all I've got for the differences between these two games. If you're interested in where Paragon remakes are heading, then definitely subscribe to the channel as I plan to cover these games as they progress. But with that said, I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.